The National Desk, America's News, now.
Great success. I think we're going to have a tremendous election. It's November 5th is very important.
Post-conviction, Donald Trump is back in D.C. and trying to rally Republicans around him. What the Democrats say about the prospect of a second Trump term.
FAA's approach was too hands-off, too focused on paperwork audits, and not focused enough on inspections.
The scandal grows why federal agencies are pointing the finger at each other for Boeing's repeated safety problems. And teens on screens, what too much time scrolling the internet could be doing to your kid's brain. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. At least 50 million people in the path of potential storms today, with an enhanced risk coming later tonight over parts of Iowa, Missouri, and Illinois. While there is a small 5% chance for tornadoes, there is a strong risk of destructive winds with gusts up to 80 miles per hour and large hail beginning in about an hour and lasting the rest of the night. Meanwhile, in southern Florida, heavy rain is continuing for a third day, bringing a high risk of flood potential from Fort Myers to Miami. A flood watch is in effect through tomorrow night as an additional 2 to 5 inches of rain and as much as 10 inches in some areas have fallen today and will continue for roughly another 2 to 3 hours tonight. Governor Ron DeSantis already declared a state of emergency as some areas received up to 20 inches of rain just in the last 2 days. Streets have been flooded, trees have been uprooted. The downpour is also affecting travel as more than 230 flights have been canceled out of Miami and Fort Lauderdale today alone. More rain is also in the forecast for the weekend as well, with at least 40% chance of storms until Sunday. The weather, by the way, impacting the scheduled demolition of the site of the Parkland, Florida mass shooting. The demo pushed back until tomorrow. 17 people died in the 2018 massacre at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. The building served as evidence at the trial for the person convicted in the mass shooting. Now, crews will have to bring down the building in pieces over the course of a few weeks. An implosion would damage structures close by. In a unanimous decision, the United States Supreme Court ruled against a challenge to the abortion pill mifepristone that allows the drug to remain widely available across the United States. The justices decided the pro-life doctors who appealed a lower court decision did not have proper standing to sue. But Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said today that the court did not rule on the drug itself, which means there will be more legislation to come.
We are not yet out of the woods. This shouldn't be a decision women are forced to fear year after year, case after case. These healthcare decisions must be between women, families, and their doctors.
It is possible that other lawsuits with legal standing courts can make their way to the court again, but it won't be anytime soon. So for now, the pill can be legally sold at stores. And in other Supreme Court rulings, the top court gave Starbucks a win in a union battle. SCOTUS ruled in favor of the coffee company in a labor battle involving the firing of 7 workers who tried unionizing one of the coffee giant's Memphis stores. The National Labor Relations Union made the argument that the workers were fired in retaliation and that Starbucks violated labor laws. The court did not agree. SCOTUS also rebuffed a California lawyer's attempt to trademark the phrase "Trump too small" for use on T-shirts and other merchandise. The phrase is a reference to a crude joke about the former president that cropped up during the 2016 election. The court ruled in favor of the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, which rejected the lawyer's application, citing restrictions on using specific names. 2 police officers are recovering after being shot by a murder suspect at a hotel in Woodbridge. One is in critical but stable condition following surgery this morning. Members of the Woodbridge Police Department, as well as the NYPD, came to the hotel with information that the suspect was there when the wanted man came out of the room shooting. 1 officer from each department was hit. The suspect was killed in the shootout. Right now, police in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, looking for suspects in a shooting this morning that killed a 9-year-old. Police say it happened at an apartment complex just after midnight. The child died at the hospital, becoming the 4th young gunshot victim in the city in the past few weeks. The motive now under investigation. Police in Phoenix, Arizona have a pattern of violating civil rights and using excessive force. That's according to a new Justice Department report on an investigation that began in 2021 following claims of unnecessary violence. The report found there was discrimination against minorities and people with disabilities. Phoenix's mayor said city officials will meet on June 25th to discuss the findings. Former President Donald Trump, he was back in Washington, D.C. and making plans for the future with Republicans on Capitol Hill. As national correspondent Matt Gelka tells us, Republicans are trying to get on the same page, while Democrats, they say the plans are a bit premature.
I'm with them 1,000%. They're with me 1,000%. We agree just about on everything, and if there isn't, we work it out.
Donald Trump is trying to rally the Republican Party around him, meeting with members of Congress on Capitol Hill for the first time since leaving office January 6th and since becoming a convicted felon.
You talk about the core issues that are defining this election. Inflation, 20% inflation over the last 3.5 years. A border with criminals coming in.
Trump is rocking it just like he's going to rock the election.
Deep infighting has fractured Republicans on Capitol Hill over policy disputes. Trump reportedly tried to get the GOP aligned on the issue of abortion. Some Republicans have pushed for a nationwide policy, while others believe the issue has cost them at the polls.
The president's statement has been what it's been this entire time. Is this an issue that states are going to make decisions on?
While Trump planted the seeds on the Hill, his allies have been crafting Project 2025, a roadmap from the Heritage Foundation for huge changes if Trump wins a second term. The proposal includes firing thousands of government workers and appointing conservatives, dismantling the Department of Education, and overhauling agencies like the FBI and DOJ.
They were unbelievable patriots.
Joe Biden's campaign dropped an ad Thursday tying Trump to the January 6th riots ahead of his visit, as Democrats say a second term for the former president would be nothing short of authoritarian.
I don't know why we just don't take Donald Trump at his word. He's said that he's going to use dictatorial powers on day one. He has shown a cavalierness about democracy. He's shown an endorsement for violence.
House Democrats launched a task force to counter Project 2025 this week, calling the conservative plans a coup. For the National Desk in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka.
And the Federal Aviation Administration in the hot seat earlier today as its chief, Mike Whitaker, admitted to weak oversight of Boeing prior to a door plug falling off a 737 MAX plane mid-flight back in January. Take a listen.
Let me also acknowledge the FAA should have had much better visibility into what was happening at Boeing before January 5th. FAA's approach was too hands-off, too focused on paperwork audits, and not focused enough on inspections. We have changed that approach over the last several months, and those changes are permanent.
An initial National Transportation Safety Board probe found bolts meant to keep the door in place were not reinstalled before the plane was built. This after two 737 MAX crashes in 2018 and 2019 killed hundreds. After the second crash, the New York Times reported regulators saying they handed off most oversight tasks to Boeing during MAX production. An arson investigation has begun in South Los Angeles after a commercial building caught fire for the second time in just 3 days. Today's fire spread to an adjacent Pentecostal church, which will now need to be demolished due to the extensive damage. It took 80 firefighters to put out the blaze. 3 residents from a nearby home were evacuated. Thankfully, no injuries were reported. And the Wall Street Journal reporter now being held in a Russian prison will stand trial. Russian authorities said today that Evan Gershkovich will be tried in Russia on espionage charges. Gershkovich was arrested on a reporting trip in Russia last year. His pretrial detention has been extended multiple times. Gershkovich has denied the allegations, and the U.S. government considers him wrongfully detained. Coming up, an improved online service is making it easier to renew a passport, but only during certain windows. How and when you can access it. Then, close calls on runways are a growing concern. The technology that could help pilots prevent tragic accidents. And later, the situation at the border is often named as voters' top concern going into this year's election. A closer look at the impact it's having on towns across the country. The number of people applying for unemployment benefits reached its highest level in 10 months last week, according to new government data. Jobless claims, which reflect layoffs, increased by 13,000 to 242,000. That suggests that the labor market is cooling in response to high interest rates that could have an impact on when the Fed decides to cut rates. And happening right now, President Biden in Italy for the G7 summit with other world leaders. Biden and Ukrainian President Zelensky just signed a 10-year security agreement on the sidelines with the goal of helping Ukraine get into NATO.
Our goal is to strengthen Ukraine's credible defense and deterrence capabilities for the long term.
The G7 leaders also just agreed to loan Ukraine $50 billion for its fight with Russia. Most of the money would come from interest on frozen Russian assets. The summit continues tomorrow. President Biden says he's not confident in a ceasefire deal in Gaza anytime soon, but says he has not yet lost hope. This despite a report from CNN that the Israeli government has decided not to send a delegation in for further talks amid continuing differences on the implementation of a deal to bring a stop to war hostilities. On Wednesday, Hamas proposed some amendments to the U.S. brokered ceasefire plan. Some that Secretary of State Antony Blinken said were workable, along with others he said were not. And this just in, the U.S. military is considering temporarily dismantling the humanitarian pier that it constructed off the coast of Gaza and moving it back to Israel on Friday over concerns that heavy seas could once again break it apart just days after they were able to resume aid delivery operations. It would be the second time in just a matter of weeks to see it be removed. Earlier this month, the pier broke apart and sustained damage in heavy seas and was removed before then being returned about a week later. A final decision is expected tomorrow. And the possible closure of the pier could serve a huge blow to an aid distribution effort already facing severe obstacles, including plummeting deliveries due to dangerous conditions and the IDF recently closing down a major aid thoroughfare in Rafah. According to UNICEF, 3,000 Palestinian children are at risk of death from malnutrition. Hunger, the UN says, is causing children to rummage through trash daily. The accumulation of solid waste becoming a critical problem in Gaza. 330,000 tons of waste, in fact, have now amassed in or near populated areas, posing what the international body says are called catastrophic risks. A bill to protect IVF access across the country failed today in the U.S. Senate. 47 Republicans voted down the measure that needed 60 votes to pass. Democrats have been calling for legislation to protect in vitro fertilization since an Alabama Supreme Court decision ruled embryos to be children, jeopardizing IVF in the state. A subsequent state law has protected IVF. Republicans point to that as a reason to not federalize the issue. Also in the Senate today, Tennessee Republican Marsha Blackburn issued new legislation to create a human trafficking database to be run by the FBI. Using state-level crime data, this bill aims to streamline information sought by anti-trafficking groups and survivor support organizations. The bill is co-sponsored by Minnesota Democrat Amy Klobuchar. The U.S. State Department estimates that between 14,000 and 17,000 people are trafficked into the country every single year. Parents have often been told to limit their children's screen time. A new report supports the suggestion that too much screen time for teens is dangerous, especially on the internet, causing some changes in their brain. The National Desk's Angela Brown has more.
Here's the study grabbing attention, published in PLOS Mental Health. Researchers reviewed 12 neuroimaging studies involving 237 10 to 19-year-olds diagnosed with internet addiction. They found brain signaling related to controlling behaviors, attention, and understanding their own emotions was disrupted, meaning too much internet could hurt their brain.
Can you reverse that?
You can reverse it. It takes longer to reverse than it does to do.
Max Chang, the study's lead author, described the impact on young people, saying, for example, they may struggle to maintain relationships and social activities, lie about online activity, and experience irregular eating and disrupted sleep. Betsy Linnell, assistant professor of psychology at Cedarville University, says parents need to act now.
Everybody's addicted to their phone. But when you think that 75% of the people that are addicted to their phone also say that they don't do well in relationships, 70% also have other addictions, it is alarming that we have to help kids not be addicted.
Reports indicate all of the studies reviewed by the researchers were conducted in Asia and that most of the participants were actually males. China was the first country to declare internet addiction as a public health crisis. In Washington, D.C., I'm Angela Brown.
The self-driving robo-taxi company Waymo has pulled its entire 672-car fleet due to defective software that could lead to accidents. In May, an in-service Waymo car struck a utility pole before picking up a passenger in Phoenix. No one was hurt. A recent NHTSA investigation also identified as many as 17 collisions involving Waymo cars. It is unclear how long the service will be off the road. The State Department is rolling out an improved online passport renewal service. You'll be able to upload documents digitally instead of mailing them. Right now, this option is available every day starting at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for a limited number of applications. It'll still take 6 to 8 weeks to process. More information is available on the State Department's website. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America.
Our safety system is showing clear signs of strain that we cannot ignore.
The NTSB has warned about several close calls with commercial jets, including this near miss in Austin, Texas, when two flights came within 170 feet of colliding. In an accident report just released on the JFK incident, the NTSB again recommended technology to, quote, provide visual and oral alerts to flight crews of traffic on a runway. It's exactly what Joe Duvall had here in Yakima.
So that third set of eyes kind of does know better than you might.
Duvall flies for Honeywell Aerospace Technologies, which is working to get their SURF-A alert system certified by the FAA.
It's the difference between life and death. The sooner we can give the pilot an alert that there is a potential collision, the more time the pilot has to process that information.
This dashboard monitors heat-related illnesses associated with exposure to high temperatures during the heat season from March to October in Bexar County. It's updated every Wednesday. The dashboard at this time shows that 73% of men in the 25 to 44-year-old age range are most vulnerable to the heat.
This way, it can allow the community members, employers to see that these heat-related illnesses are occurring in our community and see who is being impacted and hopefully help them make sure they're implementing as many measures as they can, either with their employees or students or volunteers, whoever they might have.
Sheriff Mike Chapman wants every elementary school in Loudoun County to have a school resource officer.
You never know when a tragedy can happen.
But on Tuesday, during a school board retreat, Loudoun County Superintendent Aaron Spence recommended against placing SROs in elementary schools.
I think it's a mistake for him to try to take that off the table so quickly. I think it really deserves public discussion.
Chapman says school resource officers can more quickly respond to acts of violence, such as a school shooting, and school board member Dina Griffiths agrees.
I think nothing replaces a police officer, an actual police officer who's fully trained on site. We're in a tough climate right now. I think you always have to be looking to protect our children. I mean, it's just an obvious thing with everything that's going on in our country today. You should have SROs, you should have police on site, just in case of an incident.
Coming up, Arizona has seen a big increase in border traffic over the past year. We're going to talk to a rancher there who's feeling the impact on a daily basis. For voters in the upcoming election, it's often named as the #1 concern, the situation at the southern border. With mass migration now a global event, the impact can be felt in U.S. cities and counties in a major way. Spotlight on America's Christine Frizzell was on the ground in one of the busiest border sectors in the country.
It's a scene that's been playing out right here on this land for more than 100 years. John Ladd runs this 16,000-acre ranch he took over from his father, who took it over from his.
This is the worst it's been for us. We're not giving up, but what do you do?
He's referring to the change in human traffic on his land. Most people escorted into the country by smugglers.
The cartel strictly controls who comes across the border. I can't keep my fences up. I just do the perimeter, and it's easier to cut the fence than to crawl through it. So that's an everyday deal.
His is one thread in a patchwork of stories that spans across the entire state of Arizona, which has seen a significant rise in border encounters over the last year.
We have seen everything from public safety challenges, national security challenges, and humanitarian challenges.
Sheriff Mark Daniels confirmed the criminal organizations make it nearly impossible to secure and patrol the border.
Along the border, when it comes to intelligence, the eyes and ears,
Who's doing a better job, Border Patrol or the cartels?
Well, the cartels. You look at their profits. You look at their end game. They are.
From the ranch land of Cochise County to Arizona's small towns and larger cities, the challenges are there, but a bit different.
It would have either come in on foot, some came in by Uber, some came by taxi, some came by Border Patrol, and some came by ambulance.
Yuma, Arizona has also experienced several waves of large groups of migrants, some in dire need of medical attention. Yuma Regional Medical Center, the only hospital of its size within a nearly 200-mile radius, equidistant to Phoenix and San Diego.
Had a significant influx of individuals seeking emergency care and who were pregnant, who had had little to no prenatal care. Scheduled inductions would sometimes have to wait just because we had several emergencies happening with migrants at the same time.
Dr. Robert Trenchell says at the time, billing Medicaid was not an option, which meant $26 million in medical bills.
How much of that have you gotten reimbursed?
$0. $0 from the $26 million in charges.
The drain on hospitals, schools, and local governments is adding up as those who profit from the crisis, the cartels, get richer. For Spotlight on America, I'm Christine Frizzau.
Coming up, a rare celestial event is expected any time now. What it's going to look like and how long it'll last when we come back. NASA says astronomers are expecting what will look like a new star to appear in the night sky between now and September. And here's a close-up look. It's a celestial event that has been years in the making. The expected brightening event is known as a nova. A nova refers to the sudden brief explosion from a collapsed star called a white dwarf. Once the nova peaks in brightness, it'll be as if a new star has appeared. This one will be visible for a few days without any equipment and a little over a week with binoculars. It will then dim and disappear from sight for another 80 years or so. So let's just hope we can catch it. That does it for this edition of the National Desk. We do invite you to join us again this evening for more coverage on America's top stories. I'm Amira David. Have a wonderful night.